arrival of Thomas Roe and subsequent trade permissions set in motion the process of East India Company's expansion across Mughal India. We already saw that by 1623, EIC had established factories in Surat, Bharuch, now known as Bharuch, Ahmedabad, Agra, and Masulipatnam. In this lecture, we will see how EIC established its hold in South India and how it dealt with its European rivals, the Portuguese and the Dutch in 17th century India. Now, the 17th century was a time when Mughals were still reigning supreme across most parts of North India, right from Surat in the west to Bengal in the east, and even parts of the Deccan. Despite the Mughal predominance across most parts of India, there were various regional powers that challenged the Mughal authority from time to time. And one such formidable regional power were the Marathas. There were frequent power strifes between Mughals and the Marathas. During this period, the English, they remained petitioners before the Mughal authorities. But it was as a result of such conflicts that the English traders and factory owners realized the importance of gaining means to protect their trading interests in India. Now, understand this. In 1625, the chief of the Surat factory went forward with plans to fortify the factory. They were arrested by the Mughal authorities, who saw any such unwarranted move as an affront to their own authority. Even when the company's rivals, as we talked earlier, like the Dutch or the Portuguese, they launched pirate attacks against the Mughal ships, it was the president and the members of the EIC's council who were arrested and later released on the payment of £18,000. Now, under these circumstances, it was against this backdrop that the company realized they could not depend solely on the Mughal to protect their rights in India, and that they needed to look at more neutral alternatives. At this moment, the conditions for the English were more favorable in South India. Now, why was that? The reason for that was that with the decline of Vizagapatnam kingdom in 1565 CE, when they were overthrown, there was no central leadership in the south, nor was it under any direct Mughal influence. So now, it was easier for the English traders to appeal to the greed of the local rulers, who were in a perpetual state of infighting. In the first half of the 17th century, English made quite a lot of progress in South India. As we have already seen, by now they had established their factory in South India at Masulipatnam. But then understand, it was not enough for them. And the breakthrough establishing EIC's move southwards took place when they secured the Golden Farman. Now, what is this Farman? From whom did they gain it? So please understand, they got the Golden Farman from the ruler of Kolkata in 1632 CE. And under the provisions of this Farman, the company established free trading access at the Golkanda coast by agreeing to pay an annual fee of 500 pagodas to the local ruler. Next is the second and the most important development, which came 7 years later when Sir Francis Day secured the permission from the ruler of Chandragiri to build a fortified factory or a fortification at Madras in 1639 CE on the condition of sharing half the customs revenue with the king. Now, after this permission, the English built a small fort around their factory, which came to be known as Fort St. George. Now, This fort was constructed on the seafront. Since then it became an important trading post in the years to come, the city grew around this fortification, attracting local population to come and settle around this area. Madras soon became a combination of the White Town, where the English traders and residents lived, and the Black Town, where the local population settled and worked from. Madras soon replaced Masulipatnam as the base office in the south and became the headquarters of the English settlement in South India. During the first half of the 17th century, EIC managed to set a foothold on the Coromandel coast of India. They started as traders and went on to fortify their settlements, with Madras being the crown jewel in this direction. Even though the English fared well in South India, the Mughals in the north and the local rulers were not their only rivals. As we have seen earlier, the Portuguese and the Dutch had a strong presence in India in the first half of the 17th century. So, how did the English manage to deal with their European rivals? An opportunity that helped the English East India Company in India to deal with the Portuguese came in 1662 CE through a marriage treaty between Charles II of England and Catherine of Braganza, daughter of King John IV of the Portugal, thus placing Bombay as the gift of dowry to England. Now understand, this was a turning point in the relationship between the Portuguese and the English powers and brought a tacit peace between these two powers. The English crown handed over the city of Bombay to the East India Company in 1668 CE at an annual token payment of £10. Soon, the company realized the advantages of the natural defenses presented by the harbour line of Bombay, granting them security against invasive attacks as well. Soon afterwards, by 1687 CE, the company fortified Bombay and declared it as the headquarters of their trading operations on the western coast of India. Thus, they shifted the bases from Surat to Bombay, and also the marriage alliance brought the peace between the two European powers in India. Now, in the second half of the 17th century, the English and the Dutch, they too came to a compromise. In 1667 CE, both the English and the Dutch companies decided not to interfere with each other's trading routes in India and Indonesia and to keep to their own zone of influence. Thus, this rivalry for an interim time came to an end. If we look at the map of India and EIC's presence by the end of the 17th century, we will notice that the EIC has set its trading posts and factories across the sea coast of India, and some were also located in the interior locations. We have already seen how did they gain Madras from the local rulers and Bombay from the Portuguese, and both of them how they became the headquarters in South and the West India respectively. But by the end of the 17th century, we can see their presence in Bengal too. The story of EIC's entry into Bengal started in the second half of the 17th century. And by 1700, Calcutta became the seat of EIC on the eastern coast of India.